This module has been packed with information about how you can approach your asynchronous programming. In particular, when using the task parallel library, as well as when combining this with the async and await keywords. One of the most important takeaways from this module is to remember that the continuations are executed on a different thread. For a continuation that executes on a different thread other than the one spawning the operation, you need a way to cross-communicate over different threads in case you want to update the UI. Otherwise, you'll end up having issues and getting exceptions. And that's not really what we want. The task is a simple reference to an asynchronous operation. We can wrap pretty much anything in a task.run. The work passed to task.run is then scheduled to execute on a different thread. This means that we could take any code piece that we have and ensure that this is going to be executed on a different context. Do remember that the code that you wrap inside a task.run could of course use something like the dispatcher to communicate back with the UI. And I'd recommend that you make sure that the code that you pass into task.run doesn't in fact block your application. You avoid that by doing as little work as possible in what's passed to a dispatcher. It also means that you're not forcing any synchronous operations to run on the original thread. A very common pattern is to provide two alternative methods. One method that is asynchronous, and the other one is asynchronous. Make sure that you don't simply wrap the synchronous method call in your asynchronous method, as this would be bad practice and could cause problems like we talked about earlier. A better approach is to copy the code from the synchronous method over to your asynchronous version and make sure that all the code inside your new asynchronous method is in fact not blocking your application. We can tell the continuation to execute only when it succeeded, if there's a failure, or if it's been cancelled. This means that we can make sure that we validate the success of our tasks and notify users accordingly. To summarize everything that we've talked about in this module, first we talked about introducing the task in the application. We saw how we can wrap synchronous code in a task to offload the work to a different thread, really to run that somewhere else. In our case, that was to relieve the UI from too much work. Then we explored how to get the result or potential exceptions from a task by introducing a continuation. This gives us the capability to indicate that the continuation should be executed only when the task ran to completion. You could also say that it should only run if there was an exception or cancellation. All of this combined gives you a really flexible application, which allows for starting a lot of asynchronous operations and waiting for them to complete before proceeding to do other work. The continuations provide a way to get notified when that particular work has completed, so you can handle a result. You have now seen how you can combine using the async and await keywords together with the task from the task parallel library. This allows you to introduce your own asynchronous operations. Last but not least, we've discussed the difference between continue with and using the await keyword. In fact, continue with will execute the continuation on a different context, while the await keyword will allow you to run the continuation on the original context. Now you know how to build really powerful applications that no longer block the UI or main thread. You are now capable of making the best use of the asynchronous principles by introducing a task for things that doesn't already expose asynchronous operations. You can couple this with the async and await keywords, and with that, you'll have an even more powerful application that gives your users a really great experience. Next up, we'll explore the Task Parallel library even further to learn how to apply its extremely useful methods to build even better performing applications.